the cabs a bit, because that's what you do, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one of my jobs in the company.
Right.
So I'm responsible for the business part of the company, and it was always my job to do the enclosure and the wrapping, the tolex, and my grandfather was woodworker, so I grew up in his workshop, and learned so many things when I was young, when I was a child. And my father also did a lot of woodworking when he came back from home, so I know how to handle the tools, and he told me so many things about different type of woods and how to handle which wood. So this was one of my passions, to work with wood. Yeah. And I made my first guitar, which was a nightmare, but it was a guitar. It looked like a guitar.
Made of wood.
Probably the wrong wood, definitely the wrong wood. It was a wood that was almost like concrete. However, so I said, well, let me do this job, it's easy. We don't pay that much money to the woodworkers, because it was always a very expensive thing to make a simple enclosure made of wood in Germany. They charge you shitloads of money for nothing. I mean, it's not very difficult to construct this and make this. And well, then I started to make the enclosures first. This is one of the very first enclosures I made ever. Because it's got that the Tolex that we used for the first 20 amps. Cool. 20 amps have been made with this Tolex. And then on stage I had exactly this amp on stage, this model, not this amp, this model on stage, and I tried to play through many cabinets, and always had problems with standing waves, because we had more bottom end and low mids than any other amp. So we were using cabinets from different cabinet makers and amp makers, and they designed their cabinet to sound good with their amps. So well, the next step was to make a cabinet that can stand this energy coming out of that speaker out, especially the bottom end. And then I made loads of prototypes, and they all ended up as I burned them. I just burned them. Ridiculous. I thought, well, I will make it totally different than all the others. So I made two slanted baffles, front baffles, and it worked. It didn't work. It didn't work at all. So we tried to go and try different types of wood. And then I found a wood that is a tree that is growing in Africa. It's called okoume. Mixed with poplar in layers, 7 layers. Okoume, poplar, okoume. And we used this one, and I tried to construct a cabinet that is front-loaded to get a tighter response, because the metal is straight on the front baffle, and you have a wider angle regarding the high frequencies. And that was the reason why I tried to, the 10th or 11th prototype was made of okoume with this front-loaded idea, and all of a sudden it was done, nobody knew, because I almost gave up to do this. It was just another try. And when you're making a cabinet, it's the same thing as it's not that complicated than developing an amplifier. But every time Peter sends the schematics to the supplier of the PCB, and it comes back, it's nobody knows what's going on until you just switch it on and hear what's going on. It's you can't calculate everything in the beginning. You just try and see, and if it's not going, go on, go ahead. And so we learned by many mistakes. We added the mistakes, and then it was like a multiple choice thing, and then we found all the wrong answers, and then we found the right answer, which was the front loaded. And we made this cabinet since 1996. We started in '92, and this was the first cabinet, front-loaded. We still make it. Yeah, and then we have been more and more successful in US after 4 or 5 years when Adam Jones Tool started, and then it was Smashing Pumpkins, Guns N' Roses, Korn, at least Metallica, and then some American customers and guitar players, they didn't want that tight signal coming out of the front-loaded.
Yeah.
So we tried to make another cabinet that is more the traditional way, old school, rear-loaded, with a slightly slanted baffle, front baffle, made of birch, which is a bit slower, a bit looser.
Right.
Yeah, and generating a completely different signal for completely different guitar players.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, there is no instrument that can do anything.
No, you've got to choose the right tool for
except
the right
of a
job.
whistle at the football game.
Yeah. Well, I know that when I was round at the workshop last, you had a rear-loaded cabinet there.
Yeah.
And I played through that, and the difference really was, I mean, you can hear it straight away. It is a big difference, and certainly it was, I think, sort of doing sort of sludgy, bluesy stuff.
Yeah.
Worked a lot better with it. One interesting thing we tried with the VH4S, which I had there, was to put the front-loaded, the new one in one channel, and the sludgy rear-loaded one in the second channel, and that combined tone, that was actually really nice.
Yeah, this is exactly what Adam Jones is doing.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of slightly phasing signal, because he's using a slanted Marshall cabinet, and he's using 2 Mesa Boogie rear-loadeds, and the response is different, and he's got kind of very short time shift. And if you're standing in front, it's like you're standing in front of a big phaser.
Right.
Yeah, it's almost like you get crazy if you play a chord. It's like, oh, where is it coming from? Really?